The Virginia Cable Telecommunications Association and your local cable provider presents Cable Reports. Join us now as Cable Reports brings you up to date on current issues facing the Commonwealth through discussions with your local legislators and other policymakers from across Virginia.
Welcome from the General Assembly and the City of Richmond. I'm Woody Evans for Cable Reports, and a very warm welcome to our guest, Senator George Barker, representing the 39th District.
Thank you very much, Woody. It's my pleasure to be here with you.
Good to see you. Now, we understand that you represent Prince William County, parts of Fairfax County, and part of the city of Alexandria.
Yes.
That's quite a bit to chew off. Tell us a little bit about your district and your constituents.
I love the district. It's great to represent three different jurisdictions and to be able to give representation to a wide variety of people and a lot of different issues in the three jurisdictions. My district goes from the west end of Alexandria at Quaker Lane and Seminary Road all the way to the city lines of Manassas and Manassas Park and up to Route 28 heading up towards Fairfax County. So it's a pleasure to represent the people of the 39th District.
So lots of issues there, not the least of which involve the core functions of government, including education.
Right. And
I know that you have a lot of interest in that area, so tell us a little bit about what you're doing here so far in the 2013 General Assembly session.
Yes. We actually have a very strong educational system, not only in my district, in the 39th District, but throughout Virginia. Our K-12 education program has been just recently ranked 4th in the country in terms of student achievement and performance. We've generally in recent years been either 3rd or 4th out of all 50 states, and we've done it with, despite the fact that we've actually had extraordinarily small state funding to it. We've actually, over the last 7 or 8 years, we've reduced per pupil funding adjusted for inflation by 25%. So the amount of money that the state is providing has been reduced dramatically in terms of our educational function because of the recession and the tight budget situation. What has been extraordinary, however, is how local governments have stepped up and filled the void so that we've been able to maintain strong educational systems, and our school systems and the teachers have just stepped forward and done a phenomenal job. We've actually made major improvements in student performance. We've not eliminated, but we started reducing our achievement gaps. Different categories of students, African American students and Hispanic students, are not doing as well as white and Asian students, but we're narrowing that gap. What we have to do is take a system that's actually been working very well despite very limited resources and help it continue to grow. And that's part of what I'm working on. Getting additional funding, making sure that Northern Virginia gets the cost of living differential that the governor proposed eliminating that we need to restore, and I think we'll be successful at doing that. But also getting targeted funds to help those schools and those students who are behind and who need help to be able to catch up. And the results and what we've done thus far have shown that if we make the effort and put the investment in, and particularly if we help those kids at an early age, it makes a difference and it pays off long term.
Now let's talk about those kids and helping them at an early age. How important is pre-kindergarten, for example?
Pre-kindergarten is incredibly valuable, and that's one of the things I am working on with a budget amendment to try to provide additional funding to help local school divisions take in more kids. We provide funding for an estimated number of kids who need it, who qualify, or below 200% of poverty for the pre-kindergarten program. But actually, all three of the jurisdictions that I represent, Prince William, Alexandria, and Fairfax, are not using all the monies. So we have a lot of kids who need those services, who are eligible for them, but don't get into the program because the number of slots that are funded at the local level are not sufficient to be able to accommodate them all. So we end up with waiting lists. We're trying to get that additional funding because what the data show is that if you help kids from low socioeconomic backgrounds with a strong pre-K program, they actually do better than the average student. So that you make that investment early, and that pays off long term because then when they get to kindergarten, they're confident. They do well there. When they get to 3rd grade and take their first SOLs, they're doing very, very well at that time, and it then puts them on a path to be able to achieve and succeed long term. We make that investment early. We save a lot of money in the long term. We improve our graduation rate. We improve the contributions those kids will be able to make when they become adults.
Now, the third grade is used as a barometer. I think you mentioned the
Right.
standards of learning requirements there. What generally happens to students who can't read at a third grade level, for example?
I mean, it's very difficult when you get kids who are far behind in reading by the time they get to the third grade level. You need to be able to read by the third grade level to be able to not only continue progressing in reading and language types of things, but also to be able to understand your social studies textbook, your science lessons, and all those types of things. So it permeates every single class. My daughter's a teacher at a high school in the South Bronx, and it's a low socioeconomic area. It's an area that hasn't always been doing well. And what she says is, if those kids can't read by the time they get to ninth grade, helping them do the science and social studies and those types of things is very, very difficult. And that's what we need to address long term, to be able to help those kids read, because then they can do well in all subjects.
So in other words, you learn to read and then you read to learn.
Yes, exactly. That's precisely what happens. And so it's incredibly important to get that investment early on to help those kids have that foundation.
Now, the governor has proposed a pay raise for teachers. I guess they haven't had one in quite a while. Where does that stand?
He's proposed in the budget a 2% pay raise. I actually have a budget amendment at the end to take that up to 3%. I think we need to do everything we can to start to restore funding for teachers. What we've done is some school systems have actually cut teacher pay a little bit. Most school systems have not had to cut it, but they've not been increasing it in recent years. We are underpaying our teachers. The teachers in Virginia, the average teacher salary is substantially below the national average, despite the fact that we're the 7th highest state in the country in terms of average income and that type of thing. If you take out Northern Virginia, the salary gap is extraordinary. Teachers in Northern Virginia are being paid much better than teachers in the rest of the state, and it's just abysmal what the salary levels are for those teachers. We don't generate enough teachers at our higher education institutions in Virginia. The only way we get enough teachers is attracting teachers in, and if you don't have a high enough salary level, a lot of them aren't going to come, because the good ones anyway aren't going to come, because they can get a job somewhere else that's better paying, and they don't have to struggle with the cost of living that we have in Northern Virginia.
And in his State of the Commonwealth address last week, the governor had a number of other proposals regarding Teach for America.
Right.
Talk to us about that, and I think you also are involved in that.
Yeah, I have a bill and a budget amendment in to create a slightly different program that's known as the Teaching Fellows Program. The Teach for America has been around for a number of years. It operates in a number of school divisions, generally school divisions where they're struggling students, where they're having difficulty attracting and retaining good teachers. But what's happened is a number of different cities around the country, and the large school systems, New York, Oakland, New Orleans, Denver, a number of those have established a Teaching Fellows Program. And North Carolina has now set it up on a statewide basis, and what we want to do is to be able to mirror what North Carolina's done. The Teach for America program is different from the Teaching Fellows program. The Teach for America basically takes kids mostly just straight out of college, puts them in classrooms, and provides some support to them. They teach for a couple of years, but then most of them go on to something else. The Teaching Fellows program, however, takes similar students and somewhat older students, and some who have been teachers for a few years, and not only helps them, gets them into those classrooms and helps them be able to teach there and to work in low socioeconomic areas, but also gets them in a program where they're getting a master's degree at the same time, and puts them on a path to remain in the teaching profession. So you're not only getting the value of these energetic young people who want to give something to the community, but you're getting them into the teaching career, and the retention of those individuals in the Teaching Fellowship Program is much higher than in Teach for America.
Now, talk to us a little bit about charter schools. I think you're involved with an initiative in Clifton.
Yes. Yeah, we've worked to try to open up opportunities for people to come in with strong applications and develop some charter schools that are, I think, a little different from what the public perception often is of what a charter school is. In Virginia, a charter school is a public charter school. It's not something that's totally separate from the school system, but it's part of the school system, and you want it integrated with that. There are actually 2 proposals in Fairfax County right now for charter schools. One's been filed, and the other's sort of sitting on the shelf waiting to sort of see how things go with the first one. And I've been involved with a group in the Clifton area trying to establish a charter school in an unused elementary school building there, and to do it as an international baccalaureate program. We have programs both in Alexandria and in Prince William County where they're doing what's called a primary year's international baccalaureate program, where it's been an extraordinarily successful program. It exposes kids to a lot. It gets them into group learning types of things and contributing types of things, which is extraordinarily valuable long term. And the results of that, I think, are incredible, and we want to be able to implement it in Fairfax County.
Now, there's been a lot of emphasis over the last few years on science, technology, engineering, math, and now health. Those kinds of things are critical disciplines for our students to learn. I'm sure you're involved in that effort as well.
Yeah, we have a number of proposals, furthering the development of those types of things. And part of it is a result of the fact that often we have not generated enough professionals coming out with particularly graduate degrees and some undergraduate degrees in some of those fields to be able to fill all the positions that are there. And so actually the U.S. is filling positions in those types of STEM fields, science, technology, engineering, and math, partly by bringing in foreign trained individuals to help fill those things. And we need to generate more within our within the U.S. here. So we have that, and it's what we need really is sort of the reading and those types of things as well as the STEM. You don't want one without the other is really not going to help solve our problems. And what we need to do is give these students the foundation they need and the opportunities they need to be able to do what they can best achieve.
Now let's move up the food chain, so to speak, to
Sure.
our community colleges.
Yes.
And of course, Northern Virginia has a great community college system. Tell us why those institutions are so important.
Well, they're incredibly important, and Northern Virginia Community College happens to be the second largest community college system in the entire country. It's a school system now of about 80,000 students. It provides a wide variety of opportunities for students coming right out of high school, for students who are came out of high school, didn't go to college, and now want to come back and get some training, for people who are looking for specific training types of things. So it fills a wide variety of needs within the community and allows students to live in the community, often to work at jobs and yet still be able to get their educational background. It's also filling an incredible need that we have right now. In recent years, we've not been providing the funding for both physical plant and for expansions of student capacity at a lot of our higher four-year institutions. And so what's happening now is our four-year institutions haven't grown to the extent that they need to be able to take care of all the graduates coming out of high school who are ready to go there. And so what happens now is this community colleges end up being a pathway for a lot of these students. And we now have arrangements and agreements between the community colleges, such as NOVA, and the four-year institutions, that if a student goes to NOVA and takes the required courses and has the required GPA, they get an automatic acceptance into the different institutions, different standards at different facilities. But each of them has a pathway, and those colleges meet an incredible need there. We're working to try to get a little more funding into the community colleges to help them be able to meet that need, because their population has been growing very rapidly, unlike most of the four-year institutions, which has sort of capped it. And they're trying to serve everybody, rather than being limiting in terms of capacity there. And also, we have situations where we're trying to help them make sure that their educational standards that their training is helping every student, and to help them get more full-time professors, because they found that those professors provide better opportunities for students long-term.
And of course, workforce development is one of their key goals. Even
Yes.
though the unemployment rate has gone down in the state since
Right.
2010, there's still far too many people unemployed. And one of the ways to get them back, to get them reemployed, is to ensure that they're trained.
Yes, and we have tremendous opportunities there, and so some of the programs that they offer in NOVA and other community colleges help those students be able to move into very career positions very quickly. The Woodbridge campus in NOVA has an extraordinary workforce development program there. Sam Hill, the provost president there, has done a fantastic job of really building that and helping a lot of students make that transition from high school into full-time employment and good-paying jobs. In Springfield, we have the medical education campus, which has helped fill a tremendous need that we had previously in Northern Virginia, of helping a lot of individuals be able to get the training they need for a wide variety of health professions, from radiology technician to phlebotomist to nurse, to all kinds of different things. And then we have we have in Alexandria, we have a campus there in the west end of Alexandria, just outside my district, that also has some very targeted types of things that are helping a lot of these students. So there's a lot of different opportunities, and they're filling just a tremendous need there.
And then we have George Mason University, one of our
Yes.
institutions of higher learning. The Commonwealth has some of the best institutions in the nation. Tuition costs have soared, though, over the last few years. How are you addressing those issues?
This year, I think, is not going to be the year we had the largest investment that we need to make in higher education. We're focusing on some other things this year. I think there will be, hopefully we can get to the point where we're making a major reinvestment in our higher education system within the next few years. Virginia has, the top or one of the top public higher education systems in the country. Just, the number of universities that are at the top level is just extraordinary. What has happened is it's become very difficult for a lot of our kids to be able to get into those institutions. One of the things that George Mason has done that has been invaluable is they've made the investments in the effort to be able to expand capacity and take a lot more of those students in, which has helped because some of the other institutions have not been growing at the same rate. George Mason has come up tremendously in terms of its academic standards and teaching and the student population there. It also has probably, I think it was rated the most diverse campus in the entire country, and it's provided opportunity for both residential students and for commuting students. So it has a lot of the types of things that make it a good choice for a wide variety of students who are looking for a huge number of different things. And is now, developing and continuing to improve its, its postgraduate programs as well. So there are a lot of great things that are going on at George Mason, and what we need to do is to make the investments to help them continue to grow. Fortunately, with Chuck Colgan from Prince William being a leader on the Senate Finance Committee, he's been instrumental in helping them get the funding they needed to continue to grow. And they have, not only the main campus in Fairfax now, but a very rapidly growing campus in Western Prince William that is helping meeting a lot of needs, as well as providing a phenomenal opportunity there for a high school program for really talented students in Prince William, Manassas, and Manassas Park.
Now, I know you have continued to pursue legislation regarding distracted driving habits that
Yes.
a lot of us engage in now, and I know texting while driving is something that you've worked on for the last several years. Tell us what you're doing this session in that regard.
Yeah, I've been working at this for several years, and actually the issue was brought to me by a group of high school students who said, we know that we and our friends are often guilty of this, and we know how dangerous and risky it is. So I've been working to try to get legislation in to address this issue. We have a law on the books now that says that it's illegal to text or do emails or other types of thing while you're driving, but you can't be stopped for it. So in effect, it's to some extent a feel-good but pretty much toothless law. What I've been trying to do is to make it a primary offense rather than a secondary offense, so that someone can be stopped for it. And this year I'm working with Delegate Rich Anderson, who's also covers a good bit of the area that I cover in Prince William County and is one of my constituents in Prince William. And he and I have legislation in both the House and the Senate to be able to change it from a secondary offense to a primary offense, and also to increase the penalties significantly, so that it is a deterrent and we send a strong and clear message to people that it's not acceptable. The studies show that texting while driving is essentially as dangerous as someone who's intoxicated and could be convicted of driving while intoxicated. The accident rate for someone who's texting or emailing and that type of thing while driving is 23 times as high as for someone who's not.
23 times
23 times. I mean, not
wow.
2 times as high, not 3 times as high, not 10 times as high. 23 times as great. So there'll be, if you don't text while you drive and someone else is texting while you drive, they'll have 23 accidents by the time you have your first accident.
Wow.
So
Wow.
we need to protect people. And I hear all the time from people who say, please pass this bill. And I say, I'm trying. And actually, last year we had a pretty good response. I keep getting it through the Senate, but it gets killed in the House of Delegates. But last year when it was considered in the House of Delegates, the chair of the subcommittee that killed it, we did have a longer discussion, so there was a pretty full discussion on it. And he said, well, we're not going to pass your bill this year, but we may do it, we're going to do it one of these days, and it may come soon. And he actually has a bill on to deal with the issue as well. So I think we're reaching consensus on that, and I'm very optimistic that we'll be able to pass that legislation this year. And I'm appreciating working with Delegate Anderson. He and I worked together on a number of things to be able to get that done this year.
Great. Now, another issue that affects the jurisdictions you represent is transportation. And
a little
education,
bit, yes.
Education and transportation are related in terms of the governor's proposal to use more of the sales tax.
Right.
To fund that effort. what's going on in terms of transportation? We know there's a lot of activity. I want you to talk about that and also your reaction to the governor's proposal on transportation.
There are a number of proposals out there, and I think that's healthy, that we're finally getting a lot of discussion that I think can lead us more towards resolution or major investment in transportation. We are in a critical situation as it relates to transportation statewide, but particularly in Northern Virginia. If we don't do something soon, if we don't do something soon by 2016 or 2017, we're not going to have any money left to be able to make the investments we need in road construction, and actually we'll be turning back federal money that's available with a minimal match because we won't have that match. So we have to do something. We've had Secretary Connaughton from Prince William's been pushing on this, but we've not gotten major action. We've had some short-term investment, but no long-term plan to get the funding. What is helpful is the governor has come forward with a proposal this year that does raise taxes, raise revenue, tax revenue, to be able to move forward on this. That helps tremendously in moving the discussion forward, because previously we've been pushing for that in the Senate, but the House of Delegates has been resisting putting in additional monies there. There are a lot of the specifics about the governor's plan that are going to take a lot of discussion, and I'm sure if we do pass a plan, it won't be identical to his. There are a lot of issues, concerns that I have, but I am pleased that he has come forward with a proposal to help address that. Senator Watkins, who's a Republican from the Richmond area, has a major plan, and he's been floating his plan out there for about 6 months. There is a major plan that is proposed in the Senate this year that would raise a substantial amount of additional revenue. I do have some concerns about, in effect, taking existing sales tax revenue and shifting it to transportation, because, as I said, over the last few years, we've already cut education funding, adjusted for inflation, by over 25%. In actual dollars, it's about 10% reduction, and inflation's about another 15%. We need to make investments back into education and a couple other areas that we have to be able to provide things for all the people of the Commonwealth and help the Commonwealth move forward. But if we don't address our transportation situation fairly soon, we're going to choke off economic development. We already have companies that are choosing not to expand their operations in Northern Virginia, but taking those expansion elsewhere because of what they're seeing with the difficulties of the transportation system in Northern Virginia and the difficulties their employees are having there. That's not acceptable. We need to make sure that we do the right things to promote our economic development and our services for our population overall.
Now, public-private partnerships have driven some construction in the state over the past few years. Talk to us about the hot lanes.
Well, there are two major hot lanes proposals, things moving forward. One is on the Beltway, and that just recently opened. That has created 4 new additional lanes, so it's taken the Beltway from an 8-lane highway to a 12-lane highway between Springfield and a little past Tyson's. Well, that may well help provide a good bit of relief, although there are some concerns long-term about what happens at the northern end with suddenly going from 6 lanes down to 4 lanes before you cross the bridge into Maryland. The other project that I've been much more involved in is the one that starts down in Prince William right now. We have the HOV lanes that start in Dumfries and then move forward all the way through 95 and 395 to D.C. That roadway is one of the most efficiently used roadways in the entire country. The number of people moved during rush hour per lane mile that's there is in the top 5 nationally. And it's because we've kept that facility available to carpools, and it's 3-person carpools, it's not 2-person carpools that exist some other places. Kept that for 3-person carpools and for buses, that we've got an extraordinarily efficient use. And the traffic there, actually between Dumfries and Springfield, the average speed is 79 miles an hour. The traffic can flow freely. It provides an incentive for people to take the bus, to join a carpool, to stand in the slug lines that are there. And it helps all of us. It helps them, but it helps all of us because they're able to move at a very rapid pace when the traffic in the regular lanes is moving at 20, 25 miles an hour. I have been concerned and had legislation in the last 5 years to say that if the state moved forward on converting that to hot lanes, that they had to maintain the speed there. Because of resistance from the business community and some of the ones developing the proposal, as well as both Democratic and Republican administrations, I never got the legislation through. But I got a major victory in the end, because working with the state and with the company proposing to develop it, I got them to agree to keep the speed at least 55 miles an hour on those hot lanes rather than lowering it to 45, which they could have under federal standards. So will be some reduction in speed there, but it will not be anywhere near as dramatic, and hopefully will still provide a major incentive for people to use that. We do have a number of issues as it relates to the fact that these hot lanes are now going to exist only from, well, actually down in Stafford County, only from there up to just past the Springfield interchange into Alexandria, not all the way north. So it sort of dumps a lot of capacity in Alexandria at a location where things were already very congested, and we're going to have to work and deal with that. So I've been working on it from both the Alexandria and Prince William ends to try to do the best we can for our citizens, not getting everything I would have liked to have gotten in the package, but at least making some progress on it.
Now, interesting you mentioned the slug traffic,
Yes.
so to speak. That's a cultural phenomenon that has grown up over the years, where people just hop in cars with others and get rides into D.C. To what extent will those will that slug culture be affected by these hot lanes?
Well, that's been one of my concerns. That if you take some, you know, a situation where the speed has been averaging 79 miles an hour, and suddenly you slow it down to 45, you're providing a huge disincentive for the people to stand out there in the cold and the rain waiting for the next person to come along who's going where they are. By keeping it, at least getting it to be able to have the speed be at least 55 miles an hour, it will still make it a little slower for them, but it's nowhere near as bad as it would have been if it was gone down to 45 miles an hour. So I'm hopeful we'll be able to continue that culture, which has been phenomenally successful. And also, it's one of the things where it's just sort of the people themselves have done this, no organization, no government operation or anything. So it doesn't cost us anything other than creating a few parking lots. And we all benefit from that, and we need to make sure that the things that are working well for us continue to serve the people of Northern Virginia.
Now, what about congestion, or at least the potential fear of congestion at Seminary Road and 395 as a result of base realignment?
Right. That's also an issue that I was working on that issue prior to being in the Senate, because I was chair of Fairfax County's Transportation Commission, and we've had major concerns about that proposal there. There were other locations that would have been far better than the location that the Army chose. Unfortunately, we're in a situation where the Army gets to do what it wants, under federal law, so we were not able to control that at the local or state level. The state did oppose that site because it was recognized that it did present some huge issues as it relates to transportation and congestion there. The experience thus far with the location there is that it's not the transportation and congestion situation has not been quite as bad as we feared, because so many of us in legislative in public office took on the issue and put a lot of pressure on. Congressman Moran was particularly successful in getting some restrictions on the number of vehicles that could park at that facility, and we all worked together and got arrangements with the Army to have a lot of people park off-site and take buses in. So there's a lot of things that have limited the number of vehicles that could come in, and even getting those spread out over a much longer period of time rather than coming in a fairly short period. We do have some issues. I mean, there are longer lines, backups on Seminary Road now in my district, which is east of 395, heading towards 395 and that BRAC facility that existed previously. And we need to continue to work addressing those, but we've not been as bad as it could have been.
Thank you, Senator George Barker. We appreciate your public service and your appearance here today.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you for watching Cable Reports, brought to you by the Virginia Cable Telecommunications Association and Comcast. Until next time, I'm Woody Evans. Okay.